Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This video is going to be looking at Samuel Ledgard Limited, which operated between 1912 to 1967, if my research proves correct. Samuel Ledgard's entry into the field of road passenger transport was a result of his astute business acumen. Already operating several steam lorries on haulage work, he purchased a petrol engine carrier in September 1912. With most of the haulage work being undertaken during the week, he decided that, in order to make most of his purchase, it would be fitted with a charabanc body, hope I pronounced that right, over the weekend and used for the carriage of passengers. Accordingly, he commissioned a local coach builder, William Nicholson of Otley, or Otley, but locals call it Otley, to construct an interchangeable 25-seat charabanc body, enabling the vehicle to be used 7 days a week. In 1913 and 1914, 3 more petrol engine lorries were purchased, and these 2 received Nicholson interchangeable bodies. The haulage business continued in tandem with the passenger transport business until 1948, when Samuel Ledgard finally wound it up. The onset of the First World War in 1914 curtailed any further expansion of the Ledgard fleet. In 1990, however, 8 Caledon petrol engine vehicles were purchased and all were fitted with interchangeable bodywork, and Samuel Ledgard began to set out the expanding of the passenger carrying side of his business. Weekly express services to Scarborough and Blackpool were resumed in 1920, originally started just before the war and dropped because of the hostilities, and excursions to a variety of places of interest during holiday periods were operated. In September 1924, Samuel Ledgard took over the operation of an hourly service between Horsforth and Leeds from the ward of Horsforth, along with 2 vehicles, a 14-seat Chevrolet with a 17-seat GMC. The frequency was quickly increased to half-hourly and passenger numbers began to rise. In preparation for further expansion and to supplement the 2 ex-ward vehicles on the new service, 2 of the 8 Caledonian chassis were given new purpose-built 26-seat bus bodies by Roe. A licence to operate from Leeds to Calverley via Pudsey was granted on the 21st of November, which necessitated additional vehicles, and to meet the requirement, Samuel Ledgard purchased 3 all-guy 26-seat B-type buses. A licence to operate from Leeds to Otley via Lawnswood, jointly with Cole & Sons and George Tate, was granted in 1925, the same year that the established business of the Cream Bus Limited of Burnley and Wharfdale, along with 9 vehicles and a garage in Burnley, was purchased. It continued to operate as a subsidiary in its own name until 1952, when it was renamed Samuel Ledgard Ilkley Limited. In January 1927, and Leeds to Ilkley via Guiseley licence of Jules Antichan, along with 5 buses, and the depot in Ilkley was taken over following the overnight disappearance of the owner. Heavily in debt, it is thought that he fled the country. This, however, proved to be a bonus for the shrewd Samuel Ledgard, who expanded his empire for just the cost of 5 buses. The following month, the business of the Otley and Lawnswood Motor Bus Company was acquired, along with their depot in Otley and a route from Otley to Leeds. By the time of the 1930 Road Traffic Act, Samuel Ledgard was operating 5-stage carriage services and 2 express services, for which licences were granted for all but the express service to Scarborough. 1930 was also the year that double-deckers made their appearance in the Ledgard fleet in the shape of 4 Lowbridge Leyland Titan TD1s. Further expansion took place in 1934 when the services and licences of the Moorfield Bus Company were purchased. This provided Samuel Ledgard with a depot in Yeadon and an additional 7 buses. Later the same year, the business of Arthur Thornton of Otley was acquired. In 1935, B&B Tours Limited of Bradford was purchased, bringing with it valuable licences and establishing Samuel Ledgard in Bradford. Cobble them all up, why don't you? At the time of purchase, the fleet consisted of 13 vehicles, which for a time retained the attractive red, turquoise and ivory livery, and remained a Ledgard subsidiary until it was renamed Samuel Ledgard Bradford Limited in 1952. By 1937, Samuel Ledgard operated 79 vehicles from depots in Otley, Yeadon, Leeds, Ilkley and Bradford, and had succeeded in acquiring most of the independent competition in the Armley area, along with their licences, and had built up a flourishing passenger transport business. Yeah, blooming heck. In 1938, Samuel Ledgard, along with the West Yorkshire Road Car Company Limited, jointly formed a company under the title of Otley Omnibus Station Limited, with a view of building a permanent bus station for the services terminating in Otley. The bus station itself was opened on the 15th of February 1939, and following the declaration of war in September 1939, fuel rationing meant that some services were withdrawn and frequencies on the remaining routes curtailed. In 1941, the War Department requisitioned several Ledgard vehicles, and although all but one were returned in 1942, they never saw further service in the Ledgard fleet. Wartime route serving the Avro munitions factory at Yeadon from Leeds and Otley was allocated to Samuel Ledgard and necessitated the provision of buses in camouflage livery, a stipulation that was not always adhered to. Following the death of GFT, a joint operator of the Leeds-Otley route in 1943, Samuel Ledgard purchased the business from his widow, further consolidating his position as the leading independent operator in the area. The fleet itself consisted of two 1930 AEC Regents, a 1938 All Leyland TD5 and three Barnaby-bodied Leylands, a 1934 LT5A, a 1935 LT7 and a 1936 LZ2, of which all but one were added to the Ledgard fleet. Other wartime additions to the Ledgard fleet included three All Leyland TD7s in 1940, two Bedford OWBs in 1942 and two Pickering-bodied Guy Arabs, and another Bedford OWB in 1943. He had a lot of buses. In 1944, four door-bodied Daimler CWA6s and two dupe-bodied AWBs were delivered, and finally in 1943, 10 more double-bodied Daimler vehicles arrived, two CW6s and 8 CWA6s. For those in the know in regards to buses, you will understand what they mean. For those who don't, just go along with it. Following the cessation of hostilities, the end of the war in other words, the pre-war frequency of many of the routes was reinstated, and Samuel Ledgard's passenger traffic grew rapidly, necessitating the replacement of several of the older vehicles, some of which had struggled to survive the war years. 6 new All Leyland PD1s arrived in September 1946 and were immediately put into service. Although it was 1948 before any further vehicles, 8 double-bodied Leyland PS1s were delivered. Probably struggled to keep up with it. A request to serve the new post-war Westbourne housing estate at Otley was received in 1949, and a circular service around the estate was commenced, linked with another service which served Newhall. In 1950, a new route from Otley to Beckwithshire via Stainburn, replacing the loss-making Otley to Stainburn service, was instigated to coincide with the market days at Otley in the hope of attracting more businesses. Sadly, this service did not live up to expectations and was withdrawn in May 1951, leaving the area without public transport. Use it or lose it. Later in 1950, Ledgard rerouted their Horsforth to Otley service in Rawdon to serve a housing estate consisting of mainly elderly residents, which involved a detour from the main road via Canada Road and Batter Lane. I'm sure there would have been a chip shop on there. In October 1950, Ledgard visited the commercial motor show and ordered a Foden PVSC coach which could carry as much as 37 people. Although not the first Foden in the Ledgard fleet, it was to become the pride of his fleet, replacing the elderly Maudslay SF40 purchased in 1935. 3 new Old Leyland PD2-12s were delivered in 1952 with their bodywork unpainted. These were painted at Armley Depot, since Samuel Ledgard had discovered by painting them himself rather than allow laymen to do the work, they were saving us quite a few pounds. Proper Yorkshireman. And that is where we will end this video, part 1 of this video, because there's still a hell of a lot to go, and you're probably falling asleep by now. So please do join us in part 2, which unfortunately will start with the death of Samuel Ledgard himself at the age of 77 on the 4th of April 1952, and what happened to the company after his death. So see you for part 2. Like, share and subscribe, and until then, take care of yourselves.